I now request Rotarian Anand Dalla, co-chair of the Programs Committee, to introduce our guest speaker, Ms. Divya Thani.
Divya is a good friend of ours, Kavita and I. And since her mother's here, I think she should have really named her as Diva instead of Divya because she's really a diva in the travel industry. Divya has recently taken on the role of the global editorial director at Conde Nast Traveler, in addition to her already existing role as editor-in-chief of Conde Nast Traveler India. Divya has been with the brand for over a decade now. CNT, as it is popularly known, is the leading resource for luxury travel with content across print, digital, video, as well as on the ground and virtual events. It is present across the US, Europe, India, China, and the Middle East. Divya has worked with various state tourism boards on innovative projects and on several initiatives ranging from India, including the Make in India campaign. A Mumbai native, she graduated summa cum laude from the University of Pittsburgh. She is also the recipient of the inaugural Jagdish T. Seth Award for Young International Alumni Achievement. She will be moving to London later this year in a new role, and we'll miss her in Mumbai. All the best to you, Divya. Over to you, Samir, to read out the citation.
Thank you, Anand. The Rotary Club of Bombay is pleased to present the Jain Young Women Achievers Award to Divia Thani, Global Editorial Director, Conde Nast Traveler, for successfully leading Conde Nast Traveler for over a decade, for brilliantly overseeing strategy for print, social, digital events, and virtual events, 360-degree properties, and commercial partnerships, for being the most respected travel, tourism, luxury goods, and lifestyle writer, for building most successful brand, marketing, and content strategy. I now request President Framrose Mehta to take over.
Thank you, Samir. Divya, along with the certificate, we will also be sending you a silver salver which reads, the Rotary Club of Bombay is proud to present the Jain Young Women Achievers Award to Divya Thani for being the most admired and respected writer on luxury, travel and tourism, lifestyles, food, fashion, and art.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure, our pleasure, absolutely. May I now hand it over to Farhat Jamal to please take the proceedings forward. Farhat, go ahead, please. You're on mute.
Firstly, congratulations, Divya. Congratulations for being awarded the Jain Award as Young Women Achiever. It's a very well deserved, I must say. And thank you very much for finding time to receive this award and also for this conversation today. So let me start by a very simple question, actually. Tell us about your journey where you started as a travel writer. I'm sure it must have been way back a few years, decades probably. And now from a local stage or domestic stage to a global stage, being a global editorial director for the world's top magazine, luxury travel magazine. And just take us through how it has been all these years.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you very much for this award. It means a lot to me to be here today with all of you. Farhat, of course, I've known you for a long time, and Anand as well, so it's particularly special to be here. I was actually a member of the Rotary organization in my own childhood, so this is really special to be here, and I had a chance to see what amazing work the Rotary organization does. So it really is very, very commendable what all of you do. My own journey just started out fairly simple, fairly average. I was born and raised in Bombay. I went to a convent school in Colaba. I went to Xavier's for 2 years before going off to college in the US. I had always, and I know that as someone mentioned, my mom is on this call, so if I say anything that's incorrect, I'm sure she'll be able to correct me. But she was always very, very particular about our English growing up. I had a great love of reading as I was growing up, and so I always wanted to be a writer. I was the editor of my school magazine, editor of the college magazine, editor of my university magazine. So I don't think it was a surprise to anybody when I started in a career in publishing. When I moved back to India, I joined a fashion magazine. I quickly found that I was more interested actually in the sales side, so I learned publishing sales. I did that for a couple of years before moving back to editorial. So I was part of the Time Out brand, which many of you probably know. Time Out Mumbai helped launch that in the country. And then I moved to Vogue, which is when Conde and Nast came into India. I worked at Vogue for about 3 years doing features, interviewing a lot of celebrities and doing a lot of that sort of writing. And then 3 years later, I was given the opportunity to launch Conde Nast Traveler, which is probably around the time, Farhat, that you and I must have met. And we launched that about 11 years ago now. And it's been an amazing journey. I can't say that I ever intended to be a travel writer. It just sort of happened along the way. I was open to lots of opportunities. I had many people who believed in me along the way, including my boss, and provided these opportunities to me. So I was very lucky. And the new role that I'm taking on now is a big challenge. I'm very excited about it. And I hope to do my very best to showcase the best of the Indian travel and tourism industry to the rest of the world. I think we have a lot to offer.
Thank you, Divya. That was great. Tell me, how has this pandemic impacted our approach to luxury travel, just other travel also? And experts predict that post-COVID, as and when it happens, the industry the luxury travel industry will bounce back sooner than other travel. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I would have to agree with that. I mean, when we went into the pandemic last year at the start of lockdown, all of us thought that business travel would, of course, be the first to come back because it was so necessary for people to travel for business. And what we've seen in actuality is the complete reverse. So what we're actually seeing is that more and more people are able to conduct business over Zoom. They're able to do a lot more working remotely. A lot of people are not even excited about the idea to go back into their offices. And so I think we're going to see business being conducted very differently. I'm sure that all of you have personal stories and examples of that. In terms of leisure travel, of course, what we're seeing is, I read this wonderful line the other day in the New York Times. They said that travel was the pursuit of togetherness. And I think that that's really true because really what we're doing now is looking for chances to be reunited and to spend time with our family and our friends, all the people that we've been so separated from for the past 1 year. And so travel really has become the opportunity for us to be together in those spaces with the people that we love and that we want to spend time with. And obviously leisure travel, when we talk about luxury travel, luxury certainly will lead the way because these are people who have the most amount of disposable income to spend on pleasures like that. And so I think it's quite normal for luxury to lead the way in that sense. Luxury travelers have always been the first to sort of create the trends. So I don't think this would be any different. But to answer your question in a larger way, Farhat, the travel industry, as you know, has been completely wrecked by COVID. What we saw for a year ago, it was the first to be affected, with flight stopping. And it is probably the last industry to recover as well. We've seen a lot of other industries bounce back quicker. What is encouraging to me, though, is that I do believe that we're sitting on a once-in-a-lifetime, unprecedented opportunity when it comes to travel. Because I don't think that any of us has spent so much time thinking about travel as we have in the last 1 year. I think that all of us have really had the chance to think about what it means to us. We've all felt what it means to have a lack of travel. We've all felt, what it feels like when you're cooped up at home, even though your home is very comfortable, and we're all so grateful to be safe and to be home. We have realized just how important travel is to our lives and how integral it is to our lives. How important it is even for our mental health and to just rejuvenate and refresh ourselves. In addition, of course, to being able to travel the world to meet all of our extended family and friends and business partners. So I think in that sense, just the fact that people have realized the value of travel in the last 1 year and that it has become their number one priority. I think that when the pandemic ends, very few of us are thinking about the pandemic is over, what is the next piece of jewelry I'm going to buy, or what is the next handbag I'm going to buy. I think all of us really are thinking, where do we want to be and who do we want to be with? And I think for me, that means that it's indicative of very positive growth for the travel industry. So while the last year has been terrible, there's no denying that for the industry. I'm extremely, extremely optimistic about where we're heading next.
Thank you. My next question is about, the luxury travel has evolved to become more experiential. People are looking for experiences today. And more and more people are relying on alternative sources, which is the net, basically. You can Google and just find out what's available, what kind of experience they can get in a destination, and so on and so forth. And how do you see the role of a magazine like Cnt evolving in this space? Helping people make those choices.
Well, I think that the switch, or not switch, but I would say digital being complementary to print is something that we've actually been seeing for quite a while now, several years. It has certainly been exhilarated during the pandemic. With Conde Nast Traveler, which is the magazine that I edit, we have a magazine, but we also have a very robust website. We also have, as was mentioned in the introduction, we have very large-scale events and awards. We've now moved into the virtual event space as well. Video is a huge growth area for us. And so we really are looking at being everywhere the audience is being. So anywhere that you're looking to find travel information, the goal is that Conde Nast Traveler is there helping you along the way. So whether you're looking at Instagram, whether you're looking at Twitter, whether you're going to the website, whether you're just searching into Google, whether you're the kind of person who enjoys print and loves the magazine, the brand is there making sure that we're providing the best information we possibly can in the best format that's available to us. The role of print, obviously, is a larger question. For us, we find that in the luxury space, honestly speaking, we have not seen print fall the way that we have in the West. So in the UK, in Europe, especially in the United States, you find that magazines, traditional print magazines that we used to buy off the newsstand, have really dipped in terms of sales. But India is still a very strong print market. So we have still the highest circulation of newspapers, for instance. I know that in my own home, this entire last year, I've been trying to get my parents to switch and avoid bringing newspapers into the house and just read off of their iPads, and they refuse. They still want to feel that newspaper in their hands every morning when they wake up. So I think that for a lot of people, print is extremely important. I think especially when you look at the luxury space and when you look at the lifestyle space, you have these beautiful glossy magazines. And when you flip through the pages of those magazines, you're able to sort of be transported. It's an escape. It's very sort of aspirational. It inspires you to travel. And when you look at online, what tends to happen is that the inspiration for traveling comes from print. It comes from these really beautiful images that you see in these gorgeous magazines. But when you're actually looking to book, when you actually want to figure out, okay, you know what, I've decided that Kashmir looks amazing in the magazine, I want to go there. But how do you actually make a plan to go? How do you decide which hotels to look at? If we've recommended hotels to you in print, you're going to go online right away to see what they look like on the website, to call them perhaps, or book online. You're going to check flight prices online, all of that sort of stuff. So what we see is that they really work complementary to each other. The inspiration will continue to come from print, at least when we're talking about luxury lifestyle. And then we see that everything else, the transaction usually will take place online. That said, India, as you know, travel agents are still very strong in our market, again, in comparison to other markets. So I think that we are still very well balanced when it comes to, IRL or in real life or on ground versus everything that's happening online. So at the moment, we're still quite split, evenly split, I would say.
I tend to agree with you because I think print in India is here to stay. I don't think the print is going away in a hurry.
No.
I know for a fact that I've been unconnected CNT like issues, and I have a battle with my wife that when you're going to get rid of them. So I kept them, and I keep opening them and keep looking at them because I think they have a very different, so to say, messaging and connect vis-a-vis digital. Maybe I'm. So,
yeah, no, I'm very happy to hear you say that. So we, when we put the magazines together, we really think very hard about trying to make each one of them feel like a collector's issue, and really making sure that it's as beautiful as it possibly can be. And specifically for me, I think the great pride and one of the things that I'm most happy about having done this for 10 years is just the ability to showcase India in the most beautiful way possible. And that means an incredible, it means a lot to me to be able to do that, to inspire our Indian audience to actually visit places in India, to me is the most fulfilling thing. And I think when we're able to do that through the print magazine, it's very fulfilling.
I think even the products that you actually kind of include in the advertising sort of section of yours, I think they're also part of the story of handicrafts and many things that India has to kind of offer to the world.
Absolutely. I think, what was really interesting to me when we launched 10 years ago, Farhat, was we did a number of one-on-one interviews with the audience. And this is obviously, for Conde Nast, the audience is very high-end, they're very well-traveled, very discerning audiences. And we did about, I think I must have done about 100 of these one-on-one interviews with the potential audience for the brand. And what really struck me is at the time, we imagined that they would be most interested in London, New York, Paris, Dubai, all of those exciting destinations around the world. But what we actually found was that they were really interested and really hungry for information on India. And they wanted to travel in India, but they didn't really have a source that they felt was reliable, that they were getting the information that they needed. That they wanted for all of these recommendations to come from someone that they genuinely trusted and someone that they felt their tastes would align with their preferences. And what we found as we went along was that all of the brands we worked with as well, Indian brands or international, all had an ethos that was really rooted in a lot of India pride. And so when you talk about handicrafts, when you talk about artisanal products, these are people who are very proud to be selling a made in India brand. And as you know better than most, Farhat, we have the best hospitality brands in the world. They've all, many of them have come out of India. And so I think that it's a source of great pride for us to be able to showcase that. And we're very happy to work with partners to do the same.
Divya, I want you to just reflect a bit on India as a luxury market, luxury travel market. What is the current perception globally of India as among your readers, for example? And what do you think a magazine like Conde Nast Traveler can do to kind of reposition India as a luxury travel market? I still feel there is a lot of headroom for India to be positioned as a luxury travel market. There are lots of destinations that have kind of have a overriding preference for India. What are your thoughts on this?
So you're speaking about international audiences, right?
Even Indian audience.
So look, I think that in India, the Indian luxury travel space has evolved incredibly in the last 10 years. That at least I've been part of it and watching it so closely. We now have travel products that compare to the absolute best in the world. And that's whether you're talking about hotels, whether you're talking about brands, other brands outside of that space, whether you're talking about food, fashion, restaurants, luxury, shopping, you name it. So I think we're very much on par. I think that when you look at the outside, when you look at the inbound travel market coming into the country, there's a few ground realities. While we have everything that we can offer them, we have to be cognizant of a few of the issues that we have as well, because there's no getting around that. We don't get luxury travelers from our surrounding neighboring countries, right? Most countries in the world, whether you look at Thailand, whether you look at Vietnam, any of the countries that have really strong inbound tourism coming in, the majority of that tourism is coming in from their neighbors. Now, we unfortunately don't have those kinds of relationships with our neighbors that we would allow for luxury travelers to come into the market very quickly. What that means is that India has become a long-haul travel destination. So all of our luxury travelers are coming in from Europe, for instance, from the UK, from Germany, from France, and then from the United States. And that's the bulk of them. For all of these travelers, India is a very, very long journey. For many of them, it's a once in a lifetime journey. Right? You always have a few who are complete Indophiles and will keep coming back. But the vast majority of them, it's a once in a lifetime trip. Now, when you're looking at a once in a lifetime trip, for them, they have the whole world to choose from, right? For them, Egypt is a once in a lifetime trip. Sri Lanka is a once in a lifetime trip. China could be a once in a lifetime. So really what we have to do is market to that. It's a very crowded space to be marketing a once in a lifetime trip. What we really need to do is, of course, make it much easier for people to come into this country. So the problem is, of course, when people come in is that there's a lot of issues with logistics. There's a lot of issues with connectivity. Whether we like it or not, safety is an issue as well. So we need to be sure that while all of us are focused on changing the image and really sort of broadening this image, and all of us are invested in bringing more travelers into the country, I think it's a lot more important for us to be focused on what we can fix to make it a more appealing destination. Focus on that versus focus on the marketing. Because really at the end of the day, word of mouth is what is going to help a lot. When you have friends who have been to a country or a destination and come back raving about it and they say it's fantastic and everything was so easy, that's what makes you want to take that trip. That's what convinces you that it's worth the hassle. Otherwise, you're sort of stuck in this loop where, you know, it's a great idea, but you're not entirely sure. And then everything you hear in the news, the images you see are beautiful, but then everything you hear about in the news is not necessarily doing any favors, right? So what's happening in the country right now is the stark reality, and that's not going to be helping any travelers who are thinking about coming into this country, even for this season. You know, we already lost last year. And to be perfectly honest, with stories like this in the news, it's going to be much harder to convince outsiders to come in. So I think for us, the key is to really sort of make sure that we fix what needs to be fixed at home before thinking about it. That said, I do believe that we have on offer the most incredible travel products and services in this country. I don't think that, you know, these last few months before things got before the surge happened again and travel was on the rise domestically, I think we were so lucky to have this entire massive, beautiful country. It doesn't matter what you want to do, whether you want to go on safari, whether you want to go skiing, whether you want to go to a beach, any experience that you want in the world, you can pretty much have in India. And very, very few countries can boast of such claims. So I think that we're tremendously lucky. And I think that, you know, international audiences coming aside, I think it's really important for all of us who live here to recognize that. You know, a lot of us are talking about how we're traveling in India for the first time after so long because we don't have access to travel internationally, but we should be traveling in India all the time anyway. What we have on offer really is incredible. And so I really hope that, you know, international market aside, I really hope that the domestic market is able to take advantage of all of the amazing things we have to offer.
Brilliant. You know, one of the questions that's very asked very often, actually, how much role does food and drink availability and the choice of local cuisine, etc., play in influencing travelers to decide the destinations? Today, you know, there's so much going on with you know, dining in the forest or dining under the stars in the Maldives lagoon, or the royal dining in the palaces in Rajasthan, and many, even booking a Michelin star restaurant anywhere in the world. There's so much going on in the food and beverage space. So is it also an important part for that the travelers really take into account?
Yeah, it's actually number one. So when you look at the Indian audience, the number one factor that makes them decide whether to go to a place or not is the food. You're 100% right about that. So we found that Indian travelers, more so than any other travelers in the world, are guided by food. It continues to be something that we're extremely passionate about. And so you're right, the sort of experiences that people are now crafting around food is amazing. I think that what's happened recently, and again, the pandemic has put this trend in focus, but it was happening even before that, is the idea of farm to table. and really being able to see where your food comes from, making sure that your ingredients are the freshest that they can be, really getting a chance to actually see your food grow, understand the process, understand how it actually ends up on your plate, being able to interact with chefs. There's also a tremendous amount of interest these days in regional Indian cooking, and that's again very exciting because what we generally export outside of the country is North Indian. Everybody knows a chicken tikka masala or a butter chicken, or then they know dosas. But there's huge amounts of regional cuisine across this country that people in the West don't know about, and frankly speaking, that very few Indians know about as well. And that's become really, really popular. That's become really exciting in the last year. The rise of the home chef has become so important in actually being able to share with people the sort of rich diversity of cuisine that we have in this country. So that's something that I think we're going to actually see become even more important after the pandemic. You'll find a lot of people who had no interest in cooking today are the ones doing all the cooking at home, and therefore, again, taking a huge amount of interest in figuring out where their food comes from and how to treat it, how to best prepare it, how to stay healthy and still make sure that your food is really tasty. So we'll see that a lot of these will start coming together in restaurants as well. If you just take a look at, this morning, there was big news about 11 Madison Park in New York, Daniel Humm's restaurant actually becoming vegetarian. And they're going to do away with all meat. Which is a massive, massive step. And obviously, India is so famous for vegetarian food. And I think that we're going to see more and more that our vegetarian cuisine is sort of being exported around the world, that people are going to have greater appreciation for it. So yeah, I think that it's a very exciting time for food in India and for Indians in food in general.
Thank you for that. As a global editorial director for CNT, what kind of change, Divya, do you hope to bring to travel lifestyle journalism? Whether it's a choice of stories you tell or the way things are covered. What are the conversations you really hope to start going forward?
That's a tough question. I would say that, for me, it's always been, when people think about travel journalism and they think about travel writing, they always think about places, right? They think about beautiful hotels and these gorgeous infinity swimming pools and lovely beaches and very fancy spas. But the truth is that travel eventually boils down to people. It's a service industry. It boils down to the people that are serving you. And so often we find when we come back from some of our best trips, of course, we talk about how beautiful a place was. But how often do you come back and remember that your trip was made because of someone who waited on you at dinner and just went the extra mile to make your meal very special? Or when you have a guide and you're in the forest, everything boils down to that guide and that tracker and how good they are and how they interact with you and how they're able to explain to you what you're seeing around you. So travel really fundamentally, to me, is as much about people as it is about places. And I think that that's something that as I go along in this new role, that's something that I definitely want to highlight. I think that the industry itself is so incredibly important for various reasons. It employs 1 in 10 people, not just in India, but all across the world. 1 in 10 people are employed by the travel and tourism industry. So it's an extremely important economic driver across the world. When you look at places that have a strong travel market and a strong travel culture, you find all of the indirect industries profiting so much from that as well, many of them food related, for instance. But also, I think in terms of travel, it gives us the opportunity. We're living in a world right now where there's so much polarization, right? Even within our own country, we're seeing it today. There's no middle ground. There's very little in the center. And I think that travel is so fundamentally important to all of us being able to see the point of view of a different person, to be able to understand how different cultures function, why they function the way that they do, bridging the gap and really making people understand each other better. I think nothing in the world is more important than traveling, to really have your eyes opened up to a different way of living. That's what travel is all about, right? Putting yourself in a different place, and seeing the world from a different perspective. So in my mind, I always say travelers are the ones who will save the world, because for them, they're the ones who are seeing the world. They know what's at stake, right? If you have been on a cruise on an Alaskan cruise, or if you have been to the Amazon, if you have been to our own Sundarbans, if you have been to Kashmir, you will understand and you will be more invested in what happens to these places, whether it's from a political point of view or an ecological point of view. You will be more invested in saving them and in doing what it takes to talk about them, to make sure that policy goes in the right direction, to make sure that the people there are protected in different ways. So in my mind, that to me, those are the sorts of conversations that I hope we can stir up at Traveler. I think that, in 10 years in India, I'm very proud of the team. This is obviously everything I do is very much all about the people that I work with. I'm the one standing here accepting an award today, but really it boils down to the amazing colleagues that I have and the support that I have from all of them. And these are incredibly passionate and talented people. So I think that for all of us, it's really important that we have these kinds of conversations, and all of them are extremely conscientious. Sustainability is extremely important for all of us when we talk about travel. So I hope that we can talk about that as well. But really, for me, I think the key takeaway, the key answer to your question is that it's about people as much as it is about places.
Thank you, Divya. If we had this conversation possibly 3 or 4 months ago, I think it would have been a little different, because the way the tapering down of the pandemic was happening and things were looking better, travel industry was looking in a slightly better shape and to what it is today. And what are your own immediate predictions of when do you think travel is going to come back? Somebody asked me before this meeting, actually, when do you think it's safe to travel? So what does Divya have to say about this?
Well, like you said, 3 or 4 months ago, I would have said it's completely safe. I had been traveling from November onwards last year. And I traveled up until, I think January or February of this year. And at that point, I was very confident in saying that, if you double mask and if you are very cautious and you sanitize and everything else, that you'll be completely fine. I think the truth is, and as much as it hurts me to say this, I think that at the moment, given the strains that we have in this country and the fact that we genuinely can't predict their behavior and we genuinely don't know how exactly this is spreading and how safe it is, I would say for now, just stop till we have a little bit more data and the crisis situation that we're in abates. And as soon as it becomes safe, then of course, we'll all be, I'm sure none of us can wait to get back on a plane and start traveling. I'm sure that will happen for all of us. But to be honest, at the moment, your guess is as good as mine. I don't know when it will be, but I would err on the side of caution. Since the start of the pandemic, I believe very strongly that I would not tell people to travel unless I was comfortable traveling myself and I was doing it myself. And at this point in time, I wouldn't do it, so I would not recommend that you do either.
So Divya, one last question. I mean, if you, how closely do you work with the government in the sense of, we're talking about this COVID passport and various other kind of documents that many countries are creating for ease of travel.
Yes.
Is there anything like that, any conversation like that happening, or should it happen?
Well, with the Arogya Setu app and the COVID app that allows you to have your vaccination certificate online, I think that, that's the most important thing. The truth is that at the moment, there is no global agreement on a vaccine passport. And that's partly the problem that the travel industry in general is facing, despite the fact that the WTTC has been saying for a year, let's talk about a vaccine passport. That hasn't actually happened with all of the countries coming together. So for now, what's happening is that every single country is creating its own version of a vaccine passport. And that, at the moment, is all that they're able to use to travel domestically. At the moment, it's also being used in the UK, across Europe, even in the US in certain places. You show your certificate and you're allowed to eat indoors, for instance. You're allowed to go in and watch a concert in certain places. So it really just depends on where that particular country or that particular state is in terms of dealing with the virus. But at the moment, I think India is quite far from that. We vaccinated less than 2% of the population at the moment, so I can't imagine that we are close to any of this. However, India is an extremely important outbound travel market. And so I think that a lot of countries will be looking to bring Indians back in, and they will therefore force the government to make sure that they have something that is looked at as a recognized vaccine passport, that we're not allowing for any sort of duplication or any. I think that's another thing that we have to be cognizant about, that these are not things that should be easy to replicate or easy to fake. And so I think all of that will be really important. Linking it to Aadhaar cards and Arogya Setu, I think, was a very smart move on the part of the government. We'll just have to see how it's accepted internationally, and frankly, it's too soon to tell right now.
So there'll be a last section, which is going to be a quick fire, actually. So,
okay.
so our members also very keen, actually. 3 destinations that Divya recommends in India that they must go, leisure destinations, that they must go as soon as travel opens.
Well, my own personal favorites, I can tell you right away. I'm a huge fan of. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Kashmir. I think Pahalgam is one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen. And there's some incredible experiences that you can have there aside from just the scenery. There are some nomadic shepherds. You can actually take a walk with them. There's some fantastic cheese makers, making sort of Himalayan cheese right there in Pahalgam. So some, of course, an amazing treks and everything else. So Pahalgam is top of my list. It's where I wanted to go, and I had to cancel, unfortunately. Another place that I love very much is Maheshwar. If you go to the Ahilya Fort in Maheshwar, if you like history, and if you like sari shopping, it's a great place to go. And then in terms of, for the food, I'm a huge fan of Chettinad. So I think that, there's a lovely place there called the Bangala, which I think is perhaps one of the best food I've eaten in the country. Probably one of the best meals I've ever eaten is at the Bangala in Chettinad, and just exquisite regional food, super authentic, made by this kitchen with this incredible woman called Meenakshi Miyappan, who all of these recipes are handed down by her family. She's very strict about following them 100%. And she's got an incredible staff that puts it together. I hope you like spicy food because it's quite spicy, but it is one of the best food experiences I think that you can have in the country. So those would be my 3 places to return to.
Brilliant. Just respect of time, we got just one question, just last question for you. What's been your COVID de-stressor? I think we all are struggling with this. What's Divya's COVID de-stressor?
I wish it was something more exotic, but it's just Netflix, to be honest. I think that's what I end up doing. I need a couple of hours of Netflix every night to just unwind a little bit, and before I go to bed, and make sure that it's something that's cheerful and light and not too much drama. And then I go to bed. But for me, that's what it is. I'm very lucky. I'm at the moment staying at a farmhouse a couple of hours outside of Bombay. So just having the green in front of me, I find to be incredibly de-stressing. So I would say nature and Netflix. Those are the 2 things.
Any Netflix recommendation? Just one?
Oh gosh, yes. I'll have to. Well, at the moment, like I said, I'm just trying to watch the things that are very light and very funny. So at the moment, I think we're just watching reruns of Modern Family or something like that. But yeah, there's the whole world to choose from.
Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you. It was lovely talking to you. And I'm sure you've given some wonderful, wonderful insights to our members. I would just leave, President, can I just hand over to you for the questions, please? There's a few questions from our audience.
Thank you, Farhat, and thank you, Divya. Your take on the current trends is absolutely spot on, and we are crossing our fingers that we can actually travel domestically or internationally very soon. And also, without hesitation, we will take your destinations and recommendations very, very seriously.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
We have a couple of people who want to ask you questions, so are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Mudit, will you go ahead, please?
Yes, congratulations, Divya, for this honor and for all your achievements. So mine is like a comment question. The question is, do you focus more on international travelers into India or Indian travelers within India? And which is cheaper, luxury travel in India compared to overseas travel? And why I'm saying this is because I've traveled extensively in India, and while the properties are excellent and the infrastructure has improved a lot, still there are a lot of restrictions in terms of timings to visit monuments, game sanctuaries, and sometimes people spoiling the environment outside. Whereas overseas, they pack in so many things within the place itself, apart from maybe the main attraction. Your comments and answers, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mudit. I think you're absolutely right. When you look at Agra, for instance, if you see, the number of people who come into this country, specifically to see the Taj Mahal, and they drive from Delhi, use that amazing expressway that we have now, the Yamuna Expressway. They go to see the Taj, and then there's nothing else for them to do, and they come right back to Delhi right after that. There's not, like you said, there's no attractions built around that main attraction. There's no experiences that we've been able to create around that. And that's something that, to me, while obviously it's history, I think that the silver lining is that there's great opportunity. If somebody went and built an amazing, exquisite restaurant in Agra and sort of got people to stay there for the night and have an amazing meal there, that had a really superb experience there, or took them a little bit further out to show them something new, I think that there's so much opportunity in this country because of all of these challenges that we have. And so I always tell, young entrepreneurs that the space of travel is just, it's so wide open for us, that you could do anything. But you're absolutely right. We do need to have a greater ecosystem around travel. We need to be able to make sure that we are, the ease of doing business is something that we have to focus on. And that's something that the government is trying to do. A lot of sort of public-private partnerships today are taking place, addressing sort of, the monuments that you mentioned, making sure that they're being preserved better, making sure that the roads are being sort of kept clean, all of that. So we have a very long way to go. But like I said, wherever there are challenges, there's lots of opportunities. In terms of the former part of your question, Conde Nast Traveler in India focuses on the Indian audience. And so we talk to them about traveling both domestically as well as traveling outside of the country. Conde Nast Traveler in general has 7 or 8 editions across the world. So we're present in the Middle East, we're present in the US, we're present in the UK, other parts of Europe, as well as China. And so all of those editions actually focus on the audiences in that particular region or that particular country. And each one of them, therefore, is quite different than the other because obviously, for a UK traveler traveling to Paris is very different than an Indian traveler traveling to Paris. The way that we would even talk about Paris is very different across the editions. So travel is quite specific to where people are coming from, what their particular interests are, how long they're likely to stay in that place, what time of year they're planning to visit that place. Do they tend to travel individually, as couples, as large families? In India, we tend to travel as large multi-generational families. So all of this makes a difference to the sort of content that we create, but all of the content is created specifically for that particular market or region. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Divya. Satyan, go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you, Fali. Divya, first of all, congratulations. You truly deserve the honor. My question is slightly overlapping with what Mudit asked. If you travel to some of our hill stations, like a couple of years back, I went to Kodaikanal, and first I thought I'm entering the favelas of Rio de Janeiro and not Kodaikanal, because the whole mountainside was full of these kind of small, and the entire environment was totally, you couldn't make out where you were. Yeah. How do you really protect our sites and monuments and from over tourism? What do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you are the tourism minister, and what are your priorities for getting this in order?
Well, over tourism is a huge challenge, and it's not just our hill stations; it's all of our hill stations that face it. You're right, but it's also a problem that we see in places like Venice, in Paris, in a lot of different destinations around the world. Mount Everest has the same problem. The issue is when we make one, we glorify one place, and now we unfortunately have a generation of Instagrammers who wants to make sure that they've been to that place and just wants to take a picture and leave and not really contribute very much to the environment. If you look at the best case, if you look at people who have done it brilliantly, obviously, the example is Bhutan, where Bhutan is really sort of focused on preserving everything that makes it such an amazing destination, that makes people want to come visit, which is their nature, right? It's their environment and their nature. So they've made challenges that are barriers to visiting Bhutan that they have very specifically put into place. You have to have a certain amount of money that you pay as a tax in order to enter. The number of airlines is very restricted. The number of hotels that are built in different destinations are very restricted. And so it really comes from a policy of having great foresight and great vision and knowing what it is that makes you an important destination. So in my mind, obviously India is a much larger country and it's much more complicated, as you know, to get anything done here. But I think the key for us, the number one thing to start with, if I were tourism minister, as you asked me, I think the number one thing I would do is I would change the way that we measure our success in tourism. At the moment, we measure success by footfalls, which means that we're measuring how many people come to a destination as travelers. And if they come there as a traveler, we consider that to be great for the economy. But the truth is that it isn't, because very few people come in and actually contribute to that local economy. They're actually just putting a strain on the infrastructure, and we don't have good infrastructure to start with. And so what we really should be focusing on is making sure that we're getting fewer people, but that those people are spending more money. We should be actually measuring tourism by revenue and not by footfalls. So if we were therefore able to say that we will focus, for example, only on high-end tourism coming into this country, we will make sure that we are only giving visas to tourists who therefore we know have bookings at top hotels. We know that we can assure their safety. We know that they're not going to be a drain on resource, that they will contribute to the economy. These are people with a high disposable income. They are more likely to go out shopping when they're here. They're more likely to go to art galleries, to visit people locally, to sort of make sure that all of that money really does trickle down. And so for me, I would say that would be the number one thing that I would do. I think that that's really important. But also, I think that we need to be sure a lot of this is an infrastructure issue. If you go to so many of our hill stations, access there is a nightmare. Just getting up one single tiny road to get there is a problem. So if we could fix the infrastructure problem, I think we would immediately be able to fix a lot of the other problems surrounding all of these hill stations and other destinations. So we just need to be more strict about who we allow in. And I think that goes for tourists as well as the businesses that we allow to bring back.
Thank you.
Karan Kapoor, your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta, for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. Good afternoon, Ms. Thani. Ma'am, I would like to ask you, why is it that none of the Indian airports have been able to establish themselves as one of the global transit hubs like Dubai or Singapore? Don't you think it could prove to be a game changer for Indian travel and tourism industry?
I suppose it could be. I mean, I think that, we have to be realistic about where we are situated even geographically, right? So at the moment, we are a transit point for travelers coming in if they want to visit Sri Lanka, for instance, if they wanted to visit the Maldives. But beyond that, we haven't really been able to establish ourselves as a hub of some kind. I think that the opportunity certainly does exist, but we have connectivity issues at the moment, even within our own country, right? At the end of the day, you have to have a very strong local market in order to actually justify airlines treating you as a hub or making sure people are passing through you. At this point in time, given sort of South Asia and given the fact that our neighbors, for example, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we have to make it easy for people to travel within these countries ourselves. At the moment, it's not even easy for Indians to travel to these countries. So sort of the idea of making it a global transit hub, in my mind, is still quite far off. I mean, I hope the day comes. I certainly hope that I have greater sort of hopes of Delhi being able to do that, being able to service Nepal and other places, more so than I think Mumbai or Bangalore. But I do think that we need to sort of, the airports themselves are not bad, I have to say. I mean, I think I remember very clearly coming through airports when I was a child and coming through airports today in this country. There's a world of a difference. So I think we do need to sort of acknowledge that that has happened. I think what this present government has done in terms of opening up smaller airports across the country is extremely important. The UDAN scheme is extremely important. And I think that, as we become stronger and stronger as a local market, as India in itself, we will be able to we will see a lot more connectivity across the area, and then we will be able to talk about becoming a regional hub.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Mehta.
Thank you. Jamshed, go ahead.
Sorry, Jamshed, you're on mute.
Sorry, Divya, congratulations on getting the award by our Rotary. And just wanted to ask you that an extension to Satyan's question was, about responsible travel, or what you would call something which is related to the environment. How does your magazine encourage responsible travel and sustainability as part of something which is extremely important in today's day and age?
So thank you for that question, because it's something I should have brought up myself. But the idea of responsible travel and sustainability is one of the pillars for Conde Nast Traveler, and has been for the last couple of years, and will be more important as we go forward. We have started a few IPs as well called How to Be a Better Traveler. And this is really sort of devoted to educating our audiences on the kinds of things that they need to think about if they want to be responsible and mindful travelers. Sustainability is so important, but what we're talking about now in the travel industry is one step even beyond sustainable travel, and we're calling that rejuvenative travel. And the difference is that sustainable travel means that when you go to a place, you try and leave, as they say, you try and leave no footprints, right? You're trying to sort of make sure that there's no negative impact of you having visited a particular place. Rejuvenative tourism now, which is what we're talking about in luxury space, is about actually going to a destination and making sure that you've left it better than when you actually got there. And that to me is incredibly exciting, because it opens up a world of opportunities again for people to take that extra step. So when you go to a destination, get out of the hotel. That's what we're really encouraging people to do. Get out of that amazing hotel and that fabulous suite that you've paid so much money for, and get out and actually go meet the locals and see what you can do. Especially in India, I think we have so much opportunity there when people are going to wildlife reserves and when they're going to places that are in slightly more rural areas, agro-tourism, for instance. Go out, meet those village people. So many of them have been employed by that hotel, for instance. And I think that's what's amazing about the hospitality industry in this country. Everywhere it goes, it tries to hire local. It brings jobs into that place. Try and speak to those people and understand what their lives are about. See what they're making at home. See what they're cooking in their kitchens. Go out, and a lot of the hotels now will actually create those experiences for you. They will facilitate those experiences for you. I think a lot of our amazing hotels today have realized that there's much more to be gained by allowing people to get out and they have amazing experiences outside of their property, as opposed to trying to trap them inside and keep them there and just make sure that they're ordering more room service. I think that used to be the mindset about 10, 20 years ago, and that's completely shifted. So I think we're sitting at an amazing point in time with Conde Nast Traveler. It's something that we consider one of our pillars. We are doing our very best to try and educate people, but I will also confess it's very, very challenging, because there is a lot of what we call greenwashing going on. And so a lot of companies, travel companies, will say that they're doing something that's sustainable, but isn't necessarily going all the way. And so I think it's really on us as journalists to do the homework, to really be as investigative as possible, double check everything that we can, and then try and pass on the best information that we possibly get onto our audiences. So I hope that we can continue to get better at that.
And your magazine does kind of rate or offer some kind of regular tips on such
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's something that we now consider part of our DNA. So we're always looking at things via a sustainable and cultural angle. It's not something that we do in one particular issue or once a year or once a month or anything like that. This is really something that we consider to be one of our filters at Conde Nast Traveler. So it's one of the ways that we will curate and choose and select the people that we work with and the people that we want to showcase.
Thank you.
Pashupati, your question, please.
Hi, Thani ma'am. I just
Hello,
wanted to
how are
ask you something that you brought up in your talk, which is the travel fairs, the here and now, as opposed to the dreams, because I guess we're all locked down for a little bit. So, you mentioned about software programs and events and travel fairs. Can you give us some insight on what kind of platforms you're using, and also whether you're supplementing these events with like a cumin type food thing along with it? You said you're doing fairs under CNT.
Right. So there's two parts to this. One is obviously when I speak of events, I'm speaking of events that we create for our audiences. And then there's another set of events which are trade events. And so when we speak of events for our audiences, they are usually very food focused because Traveler in India is extremely food focused. We run India's top 50 restaurants awards, for instance. We also run another event called Hot Tables, where we bring in international celebrity chefs into the country and curate a one night only experience for a group of our audience. And so those are the kinds of events that we have been doing for the past few years, and we've now taken them into a digital virtual format. So everyone is sitting at home and eating off of their Zoom screens all together. We're sending them the hampers, we're sending them the whiskey that goes with the food, we've paired it all up, and people get together the way we have and enjoy them. So that's on the sort of audience consumer side. On the trade side, there are several events, not that Conde Nast Traveler organizes, but that we participate in. And so, for example, those are very much trade and business-based B2B. And so those would be things like ILTM, which is the International Luxury Travel Market. We have one of them in Cannes every year, a second one in Shanghai every year, and a third in Dubai. There's WTM in London, there's ITB in Berlin. So these are all sort of different large platforms all across the world that are much more trade focused. So when I'm talking about the events that we do for our audiences, I'm speaking very much about the food focused events, for instance, that we do, as well as our awards, which are Readers Travel Awards. So it's a little bit different. Sorry if I confused you.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question. Professor Satish Jairam, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Mehta. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we
good
can.
afternoon. Good afternoon and hearty congratulations to Divya. A thought purely from an academic point of view. Let's gaze into the technology crystal ball, and is the future of Conde Nast Traveler going to be virtual tourism, immersive reality, or AI-based digital tourism? What we're really saying is slap on a pair of goggles and you're actually sitting on a gondola in Venice and going through the whole experience very safely, as we potentially have to in coming years.
Well, Professor, I think in a certain sense, the future is here because we have been doing some of that already in the last year. I had one incredible experience of doing a safari in South Africa virtually from my desk in Mumbai, which I thought was incredibly done and very, very, very beautifully done. That said, it came nothing close to the actual experience. So do I think we have the capability of doing this? Absolutely, we do. Do I think it'll get even better as time goes by? I think it will. We'll come to a stage where technology is able to mimic the sort of smells of the jungle, for instance, or the smell of the sort of salty air on a beach. I think that we'll get to that stage one day for sure. But do I think it's going to replace actual tourism? Do I think it's actually going to come anywhere close to that experience of being in a place with all your senses, not knowing what's coming next? I don't think that it can. So I think that while I believe very strongly that technology will get better and that it will become more and more useful in the travel space, I think it's only going to help us and only going to encourage people to make those trips in person. I think it's just going to drive a greater hunger for people to actually be there and to actually experience the amazing beauty of the world. So I'm still very optimistic and bullish on old school travel. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Divya. Thank you very much for spending the afternoon with us, and congratulations once again on the award.
Thank you so much, and thank you again. It's a great honor for me.
Pleasure, absolutely. Satyan, would you please propose the official vote of thanks?
With pleasure, Fali. Divya, that was a fascinating discussion. Your insights have given us a different perspective on the travel and tourism industry. And it has also allowed us to appreciate how blessed India is and that we need to be responsible travelers. As a token of our appreciation for spending this afternoon with us, we will be lighting up a rural household using solar power. And we will also send you the certificate shortly.